What's up, everybody? Jay here with the inaugural edition of the Matchwheels Speed Trials. Since it's our first episode, we thought we'd start with all 10 of our vintage Hot Wheels. We have the Silhouette from 1968, the Deora from 1968, the Custom Corvette, also from 1968, and the Ford J-Car from 1968. From the Grand Prix series of 1969, we have the Ford Mark IV, the Lotus Turbine, and the Shelby Turbine. We have the 1973 Shell Promo Twin Mill. And from the Hot Ones of 1982, the Front Runnin' Fairmont, and the Murata Stalker. We will be running the cars down the Super 6-lane raceway to let gravity do its work, through the speedometer, and then around some curves to slow it down. For anybody that's wondering, the camera car put in a 388. Each car will be given 3 runs to achieve their top speed. The speedometer gives an approximation of what their speed would be at actual size. Let's start with 1968 Silhouette. The Silhouette puts in a staggering 457 miles per hour, establishing itself as a dominant force. After its second run, the 457 remains its top speed. Let's see how it does on the third run. With a third run of only 435, the Silhouette establishes itself as number 1 with a 457. Now let's see how the Deora does. And on its first run, the Deora puts in an impressive 433 miles per hour. On run number 2, it puts in a 452 miles per hour. Not quite enough to beat the Silhouette. And on run number 3, it puts in a 391 miles per hour. So the Deora finishes with a top speed of 452 miles per hour, good enough for second place. Next up, the Custom Corvette. And on its first run, it puts in a 449 miles per hour. For its second run, it puts in a 448. For its third run, it does a 427. So the Vette finishes with a top speed of 449, only good enough for third place. Next up, the Ford J-Car. And the Ford J-Car clocks in a speed of 425 miles an hour. For its second run, the J-Car slows down to 424. And for its final run, it does 423. So the J-Car finishes with a top speed of 425 miles an hour. Next up, the Ford Mark IV. For its first run, the Mark IV does a 382. Let's see if it can improve in run number 2. For its second run, it does 381 miles per hour. And for its third run, 399. So the Mark IV finishes with a top speed of 399 miles per hour. Next up, the Lotus Turbine. And the Lotus Turbine starts out with a respectable 398. For its second run, it does an amazing 417, catapulting it past the J-Car and the Mark IV. And the Lotus Turbine finishes with a top speed of 436 miles per hour. Very impressive. Next up, the Shelby Turbine. The Shelby starts out with an amazing speed of 435. On its second run, it gets a little slower with a 433. And on its final run, it does a 432. So the Shelby Turbine finishes with a top speed of 435 miles per hour. Now let's see how the twin mill does. For its first run, the twin mill does 375 miles per hour. Once again, it does 375 miles per hour. It's going to have to do better than that. And on its third run, it slows down to 374 miles per hour. So the twin mill finishes with a top speed of 375. Next up, the Murata Stalker. The Murata Stalker does a 387 on its first run. On its second run, the Murata Stalker does a 373. And on its final run, it does a 372. So the Murata Stalker finishes with a top speed of 387 miles per hour. Next up, the front-running Fairmont, our last car of the day. And on its first run, the Fairmont does 383. On its second run, the Fairmont does a 382. And on its last run, the Fairmont does a 381. So the Fairmont finishes with a top speed of 383. Good enough for 9th place. So there you go. With a top speed of 457 miles per hour, the Silhouette sits firmly at the top of our leaderboard. Tune in next week when 10 more cars vie for a spot. I'm Jay, and as always, we'll see you in the winner's circle.